What would you do if your whole family was built on lies? Would you feel safe? Or would you always wonder when the truth would come out? I was only 8 years old when I started to ask myself these questions. At that age, most children wanted toys, games, or sweets. I only wanted something simple. I wanted parents who loved me, but the family I found was not simple at all. I grew up in a quiet orphanage on the edge of a large city called Ravenford. The building was old, the walls gray, and the windows small. Every morning the children lined up for breakfast, and every evening we went to bed at the same time. Some children dreamed about being adopted by rich parents, others about becoming famous. I had a different dream. I wanted a home where people cared about me, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. If you are listening to my story now, please don't forget to subscribe, share this video, and leave a comment. This helps other learners find these stories, and it helps me continue sharing more stories with you. Thank you for being part of this journey. One afternoon, everything changed. A tall man came to the orphanage. His name was Daniel Cross. He looked important, wearing a clean suit and carrying a sharp leather bag. His smile was polite, but his eyes moved quickly as if he was studying everyone. He asked the headmistress if he could meet some of the children. When his eyes rested on me, I felt something strange. His smile did not change, but his heart was heavy. I knew it because I had a gift. I could feel the emotions of people around me. I did not tell anyone about it. It was my secret. Daniel told the headmistress that he needed a child for his family. He said he was recently married and wanted to give a good life to a girl. I listened carefully. His words sounded kind, but his heart was full of pressure, like someone carrying a heavy stone. He chose me that same day. The headmistress told me I was lucky. I was going to have a father and mother at last. I should have been happy, but inside I felt the beginning of a mystery. When Daniel took me out of the orphanage, we walked to a car waiting outside. It was black and shiny, nothing like the buses I was used to. He opened the door and asked me to sit inside. The seat was soft, and the air smelled clean. He sat next to me, straight and formal, not relaxed like I had imagined a father would be. He told me we were going to meet my new mother. We drove across the city. Ravenford was busy, with tall buildings, cars rushing everywhere, and people crossing streets in a hurry. I pressed my face against the window, amazed by the noise and the lights. Daniel watched me, his face calm, but his heart was racing. I could feel his worry, though he never showed it in his voice. Finally, we stopped in front of a tall apartment building. Daniel guided me upstairs to a bright apartment. The door opened, and a woman stood there. Her name was Clara Vale. She had long black hair tied back neatly, and her hands were still in thin gloves, as if she had been working. She smiled gently when she saw me, and for the first time, I felt a little warmth. But beneath that warmth was something darker. She was hiding something too. Daniel introduced her as my new mother. Clara bent down to look me in the eye and told me she was happy to have me as her daughter. Her words were sweet, but her emotions were sharp, like a knife kept carefully out of sight. I smiled back because I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, this strange family could become mine. That first evening together was quiet. Daniel cooked a simple meal, and Clara set the table. They acted like people who had known each other for years, but I could feel it was not true. There was a distance between them, like two actors playing roles on a stage. I wondered why they needed me in their play. After dinner, Clara showed me to my new room. It was small but clean, with a soft bed and a little desk near the window. She told me I could decorate it however I liked. I touched the bed, the chair, and the curtains. Everything felt strange but safe. When she kissed me on the forehead before leaving, I felt her heart beat faster. She wanted to be gentle, but she was afraid. Afraid of what? I did not know yet. At night, I lay in bed and thought about my new parents. Daniel was full of control and secrets. Clara was kind, but with a hidden edge. And me, I was a child who could sense everything they tried to hide. It was almost funny. They had chosen the one child who could feel their truth, and they did not even know it. The next morning, Daniel gave me a new uniform. He told me I would start at St. Helena's Academy, one of the best schools in the city. He said education was important and that I should work hard to make them proud. His words were firm, but I could feel the weight in his heart. This school was part of his plan. I was not only a daughter to him, I was also a piece of something larger. At the academy, the buildings were tall and old, with stone walls and wide gates. Children in neat uniforms walked together, some laughing, some whispering. When I stepped inside, I felt small and nervous. I had never been in such a place before. Teachers looked serious, and the lessons were difficult. But the hardest part was not the studying. The hardest part was trying to fit in. Other children looked at me with curiosity. They asked where I came from, who my parents were, and why I was there. I smiled and repeated the words Daniel told me to say. But inside, I felt the same as always. Different, apart, carrying a secret I could never explain. When I sensed their emotions, I knew who was happy, who was jealous, and who was lonely. Sometimes it was too much. The feelings of so many children filled my mind like voices in a crowded room. Each evening when I returned home, Daniel asked me questions about school. He wanted to know the names of the children, the teachers, and even what their parents did. He listened carefully, too carefully for a normal father. Clara also asked questions, but hers were softer, more about how I felt and whether I was comfortable. She tried to act like a mother, and sometimes she succeeded. Yet I could feel her living two lives, one for me and one hidden in the shadows. The days passed, and I began to understand more. Daniel was not only my father. He was something else. He worked late, came home tired, and sometimes carried the weight of secrets so strong I could almost taste them. Clara also disappeared at night sometimes, returning with her gloves in her pocket and her eyes tired. They thought I was only a child, too small to notice. But I noticed everything. And yet, something strange began to happen. Even though our family was built on secrets, even though nothing was what it seemed, I started to feel something real. When Clara brushed my hair in the morning, her warmth was real. When Daniel reminded me to eat breakfast, his care was real. They were not perfect, and they were not honest, but they were trying. Maybe they started with lies, but perhaps they could learn the truth of being a family. I did not know if the secrets would destroy us one day, but I knew one thing. For the first time in my life, I was not alone. I had a place to return to after school, a room that was mine, and two adults who, even with their lies, wanted me there. And that was enough to make me hold on, even as the shadows around us grew darker. Life in Ravenford moved quickly. Days became weeks, and weeks turned into months. At school, I struggled to keep up with the heavy lessons, but I worked hard because I wanted Daniel and Clara to be proud of me. Every morning I put on my uniform and joined the other children behind the tall gates of St. Helena's Academy. I carried my books and tried to look confident, but inside, I often felt small. The other children came from rich families, with parents who were lawyers, doctors, and politicians. Their shoes were polished, and their voices carried confidence I did not have. Some of them laughed at me because they knew I had come from an orphanage. They asked sharp questions and whispered about me when they thought I was not listening. I could feel their pride, but also their fear. Even children with rich parents were afraid of being different. Daniel told me to make friends with the right children. He wanted me to be close to one boy in particular, the son of a powerful man in the city. He explained that it was important for our family, though he never said exactly why. I sensed the pressure in his words and the weight in his heart. I knew it was part of his hidden work. I did not understand the details, but I understood enough. My father's love was tied to his secrets. Clara, on the other hand, cared more about how I felt. She noticed when I was quiet after school. She sat with me in the kitchen while I ate my dinner, asking gentle questions. Sometimes she touched my hand, and I felt warmth flow from her even when her own heart carried the sharp edge of fear. She wanted to protect me, but she also wanted to protect her own hidden life. She lived with shadows, and those shadows never left her completely. At night, the apartment grew silent, but I could sense movement. Sometimes Daniel disappeared, leaving with his leather bag, his face calm but his heart burning with tension. Other nights, Clara slipped out quietly, returning before dawn with her gloves tucked away. They never explained, but I knew. He was not only a father. She was not only a mother. And I was not only a child. We were three people bound together by secrets, pretending to be something ordinary. I often lay awake in bed, thinking about what kind of family we really were. Could a family built on lies still become real? When Clara brushed my hair in the morning, I felt her care. When Daniel reminded me to eat breakfast before school, I felt his protection. Those moments were true. Perhaps truth and lies could live together for a time. Perhaps even people with secrets could learn how to love. But secrets have a way of growing heavier. At school, I tried to smile and laugh, but the emotions around me pressed into my head. I could sense jealousy, anger, loneliness, and pride from all sides. Sometimes it was too much, and I wished I could turn my gift off. Yet, it also helped me survive. I knew who wanted to hurt me, and I knew who felt lonely like I did. That was how I found my first real friend. Her name was Eliza, a quiet girl who sat at the edge of the classroom. Most of the other children ignored her because her family was not rich. When I sat beside her, I felt her sadness but also her kindness. She did not ask difficult questions about my past. Instead, she shared her lunch with me when I forgot mine, and she smiled when I was nervous. Slowly, we became friends. Daniel was pleased because Eliza's father worked for the government, though he did not say why it mattered. For me, it mattered because I finally had someone who saw me not as a strange orphan, but as a girl. Outside of school, life in the apartment carried on like a performance. Daniel acted like a perfect father, reading the newspaper, asking about my lessons, and giving Clara polite compliments. Clara acted like a gentle wife, serving meals, keeping the rooms tidy, and smiling warmly. To strangers, we looked like the perfect family. Inside, I knew the truth. Daniel's eyes always searched for danger. Clara's hands were steady but carried the memory of violence. I was the only one who could feel the storm behind their calm faces. One night, I woke up to the sound of voices in the living room. Daniel and Clara were speaking in low tones. I could not hear the words, but I could feel the emotions. His heart was heavy with determination, hers with worry. The air was full of unspoken fear. I stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what secrets could make two adults so strong in the day but so afraid at night. The next morning, Clara was unusually quiet. She watched me carefully as I ate my breakfast, her eyes soft but sad. I wanted to ask her what was wrong, but I knew she would not tell me. Daniel left early that day, his face calm, but I could feel the weight of danger around him. He was preparing for something, and whatever it was, it made the air in our apartment feel tight, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. At school, things became more complicated. Eliza remained my friend, but other children grew curious about me. Some of them wanted to know more about my father. They said he looked important when he came to meetings at the academy. They said he was too serious to be ordinary. Their whispers reached me, and I felt the mixture of envy and suspicion in their hearts. I tried to ignore it, but I knew the truth could never stay hidden forever. Clara continued to watch over me in her quiet way. Sometimes she walked me to school, holding my hand with a firm grip. I felt safer with her, even though I knew she was not the woman she pretended to be. She carried danger inside her, but she also carried love, and that confused me. How could someone live in two worlds at the same time? I asked myself if I would one day have to choose between love and truth. The first real sign of danger came on a cold evening in late autumn. Daniel returned home later than usual. His face was calm, but his body carried tension like a rope pulled too tight. Clara looked at him carefully, her eyes full of questions she did not speak. I sat quietly, sensing the storm. They thought I was too young to understand, but I understood everything. Something was coming, something that would test the thin walls of our secret family. That night, I dreamed of shadows chasing us through the streets of Ravenford. I ran as fast as I could, but the shadows followed close behind. Daniel held my hand, Clara stayed close, and together we ran into the darkness. When I woke up, my heart was still racing. I knew the dream was more than a dream. It was a warning from the feelings that always surrounded me. The next week, Daniel told me to be extra careful at school. He reminded me to stay close to Eliza and to avoid trouble. His words were calm, but his heart was burning with fear. Clara also grew more protective. She began waiting for me outside the school gates, watching the people around us with sharp eyes. To anyone else, she looked like a loving mother. To me, she looked like a soldier ready for a fight. Our family was still together, still playing the roles of father, mother, and daughter. But I could feel it. The weight of their secrets was growing too heavy. One day, something would break. And when it did, I would have to decide if this family of lies was worth holding on to, or if I should let it all go. The winter in Ravenford came with sharp winds and long nights. The city looked cold and gray, but inside our apartment, the warmth of small routines kept us together. Daniel still read his newspaper every evening. Clara still brushed my hair in the mornings. I still went to school with my books and my hopes. On the surface, nothing had changed. But inside, I felt the difference. The air around us was heavy, as if invisible threads were pulling tighter every day. One evening, I noticed Daniel sitting at the table, his papers spread out in front of him. He looked calm, but his emotions burned with urgency. Clara moved quietly in the kitchen, but her heart carried the same sharp tension. I sat on the sofa, pretending to read, but I was listening to everything I could feel. Something big was coming. They did not tell me, but my gift told me the truth. At school, the tension reached me too. Whispers followed me in the hallways. Some children said my father worked for the government. Others said he was a soldier. Their eyes were curious, sometimes jealous, sometimes afraid. Eliza stayed by my side, and for that I was grateful. But even she asked questions I could not answer. I only shook my head and said I did not know. Inside, I felt the storm building, a storm that would reach me whether I wanted it or not. One Friday afternoon, Clara came to collect me from school. Her eyes scanned every corner of the street. Her hand held mine firmly, as if she was afraid to let go. When we walked home, I felt her heart pounding. She tried to smile, but her warmth was mixed with fear. That night, I heard her speaking softly with Daniel. Their words were hidden, but their emotions were not. Something dangerous was near. The first time the danger touched me directly was on a dark evening after school. Eliza and I were leaving the gates when I noticed a man standing across the street. He pretended to read a newspaper, but his emotions were too sharp, too focused on me. My stomach turned cold. Clara was waiting at the corner, and when she saw him, her whole body grew tense. She pulled me close and walked quickly away. That night, she tucked me into bed with extra care. I could feel her fear pressing down like heavy snow. The next week, Daniel explained that he might be away for a few days. His voice was calm, but his heart screamed with urgency. Clara stayed silent, only nodding, but I felt her worry. I wanted to ask them what was happening. I wanted them to trust me with their secrets. But I was still a child in man. Their eyes and children were not supposed to carry such heavy truths. While Daniel was gone, the apartment felt different. Clara became more protective than ever. She checked the locks twice, sometimes 3 times. She kept me close, even when I did my homework. Her hands were steady, but her heart was restless. I began to understand that she was not only afraid for me. She was afraid of what she might have to do to keep me safe. One night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps outside. Clara was already standing by the window, her eyes on the street below. She told me to go back to bed, but her heart was beating too fast. I lay under the blanket, staring at the ceiling, and prayed silently that Daniel would return soon. When he finally came back, the relief in Clara's heart was almost painful. She held his arm a little too long, and even though he smiled politely, I could feel the weight he carried. He told us everything was fine, but I knew it was not. His emotions were thick with danger and decisions. I wondered if we would ever be a normal family, free from shadows. The truth began to break through during a winter festival at school. Parents were invited to watch performances, and Daniel and Clara came together, smiling like the perfect couple. I sang with the other children on the stage, but while I sang, I scanned the audience with my gift. Most people were joyful, clapping and laughing. But in the corner of the room, I felt something else. A man's emotions were sharp and dangerous, his focus fixed on Daniel. After the performance, we left quickly. Daniel walked with a straight back, Clara's hand never leaving my shoulder. When we reached home, the tension exploded. Daniel and Clara spoke in low voices, but I knew this time I could not stay silent. I told them I felt the danger at the festival. Their eyes widened, shocked by my words. For the first time, I revealed a part of my secret. I told them I could feel what others felt, that I knew when people were hiding things. The room grew quiet. Daniel's face remained calm, but his emotions shifted with calculation. Clara's eyes softened, full of both surprise and worry. They did not ask many questions, but I knew they believed me. That night, for the first time, I felt we were not three people living separate lies. We were three people standing on the edge of truth. But truth is never simple. The following week, the danger grew closer. One evening, as we walked home from the market, 3 men followed us through the streets. Their steps were heavy, their hearts full of cold intent. Clara noticed them too. She pushed me behind her, her body strong and steady. Daniel's hand tightened around his bag. In that moment, I realized what they really were. My father was not just a serious man with secrets. He was a spy. My mother was not just a gentle woman with sharp edges. She was a fighter, someone who carried death in her hands. The men did not reach us. Something scared them off. Or perhaps Daniel gave them a signal I did not see. But after that night, I knew my family was not ordinary. They were both living dangerous lives, and I was in the center of it all. Instead of fear, something unexpected filled me. Pride. Even though they had lied to me, even though they had built our family on secrets, they were still my parents. They had chosen me, and they were willing to protect me with everything they had. For the first time, I did not only feel like a piece of their act, I felt like their daughter. The final test came on a night of heavy snow. Daniel received urgent news and prepared to leave. Clara argued with him in whispers, her emotions sharp with fear. I sat quietly, knowing this mission might be too dangerous. Before he left, Daniel looked at me for a long moment. His calm mask stayed on, but his emotions told me what his words never did. He cared for me. He wanted to come back. Hours passed, and Clara stayed awake by the window. I sat beside her, too afraid to sleep. When footsteps finally echoed in the hall, my heart leapt. The door opened and Daniel walked in, his coat covered in snow. He was tired, but alive. Clara's relief washed over me like warmth after a storm. She touched his hand, and for the first time I saw her walls break. She loved him. He loved us, even if he could not say it aloud. That night, as I lay in bed, I understood something important. Families are not always born from truth. Sometimes they are born from lies, from fear, and from secrets. But over time, if people choose to protect each other, if they choose to stay, then those lies can turn into something real. Daniel and Clara began as strangers, both hiding dangerous lives. I began as a lonely girl with a secret gift, but together we had become a family. We were not perfect. We were not safe, but we were together. And in this world full of shadows, that was enough. Thank you for listening to my story. If you enjoyed it and want more stories like this, please remember to subscribe to the channel, share this story with your friends, and leave a comment below. Tell me what you felt about this secret family. Did you believe their lies could turn into real love? Your thoughts help us grow this community and bring more stories to life for English learners like you.